You look lovely, Howard.
Thank you, darling. What is this? What's this one about? What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing?
So, welcome to our second program in the series with Sustainable Old Men. My name is Paul Harvey. I am a podcast coach, or a podcast host, and a coach. I'll pass them to my other friends to tell you who they are.
My name's Gavin
I'm Howard
London.
Guns.
Excellent.
Go on, Gav. Go on, Gav.
All right, I'm Gavin London from Sustainability UK. I'm a sustainability consultant and a friend of.
I'm Howard Gunstock. I'm Howard Gunstock. I run a seaweed company called Carbon Capture, which grows seaweed to fight climate change. I'm a climate science communicator and a friend of these wonderful people here.
God, we're so professional, aren't we?
Awesome.
So what I did, picking out on the thing that stood out for me this week, I saw, and it might have been a while old actually. I saw a post about a building in South Africa where they built the entire building out of hempcrete. This is a combination of hemp. I guess they're chopping it up and mixing it with lime and a cement binder. And this building will actually suck in CO2 over its lifetime. What a brilliant idea, using the fabric of buildings as a carbon capture process. And also the hemp itself, I guess, is part of the process as well. That's all really sucking in. They're a brilliant idea, I thought that was. I mean, there must be so many innovative ideas, like seaweed, that could possibly do that.
But yeah,
Over to
do you know,
Howard.
just fun fact, probably fun fact, last year I helped build a regenerative agriculture carbon credit from hemp.
All right, go on. Tell me more.
Yeah. So I went over to Canada and started working with a company over in Canada to build a regenerative agriculture carbon credit. And I worked with a verifying body and an awarding body in the UK, and we created something like 30,000 carbon credits.
Fantastic. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. But I did see, I mean, it was on a YouTube video of some company in the States who's looking at producing I think it's a vertical farm growing hemp using sewage waste, I think, and the hemp will then be processed through pyrolysis, and they're going to use it to make graphene. That's really great. Like quite a system. I mean,
Yeah,
whether they get there and get all
anything.
the parts, there's a lot of moving parts to that process. So that's a really nice idea. But
But that's an example of something that that carbon capture a bit like, where you're creating a circular ecology business model.
hmm, hmm.
So I agree with the development of hempcrete. There are certain issues with it which we can come on to on a completely different day.
No, you have to say a little bit more. You can't just leave a little bomb like that and not let it
Okay,
go off.
so
He does that all the time.
No, he does, doesn't he?
the issue with hempcrete as compared to traditional concrete, as it stands at the moment, because there will be more innovations with hempcrete in particular, is to keep the same tensile strength. It has to have a greater cross-sectional area. So as a consequence of that, your internal floor area, if you is lowered compared to traditional concrete
All right, so the
methods.
blocks are wider basically to make
Exactly.
that. But they are automatically. I imagine they're automatically insulating because of the hemp inside them. I would imagine.
That,
I'd
but
agree with that.
you come back to the carbon abilities. Concrete, none. However, there have been some developments on that front. There, a company called Cemex, which is the world's biggest concrete company, is developing stuff. And there has been a carbon-free piece of concrete made in a university. But
Is this
the
lime
question
crete,
now,
or is this lime crete, or am I talking about something else?
the one in the university, I don't know, but it is got great potential. It's got to be proved it can be developed at scale as a consequence of that. Yeah.
And that's
Do
the
you know
beauty
what
of
I
this one.
really like most about this concrete? Do you know what I really like most about this concrete conversation? It's so directly related to travel.
Oh,
Are we
it's
talking
just-
about travel, Paul?
No, we are talking about trouble, but I mean, it's just it's just an opening conversation, a good piece of news for this week, I think. And what I like about it is that that there are innovators out there like Howard Gunstock and his team.
It is going to be a running joke. I love it.
Our topic for today, if we want to get onto our topic, is aviation, isn't it? It's holidays. That's what our topic is.
Yeah. And in fairness, Howard, concrete's used in a lot of airports, which is the link to aviation.
It's really
Oh, what a fantastic
A runway is
link.
probably
What a great
concrete.
tenuous link.
Thank you very much.
Tenuous link. Nice.
Segue.
Well done.
Seamless.
Thank you.
Professional. Okay, guys, we did say we would talk about air travel and that idea, that thing about holidays, because it is, people are thinking of or planning doing holidays. I've met a lot of friends who go, I haven't been abroad for years, I'm going to go abroad this year, I'm getting on a plane, I'm going here, I'm going there, and that's sort of, yeah, okay. And I have to admit, put my hand up here, I am actually going to fly this year. I'm going to fly once this year. My wife is ordained in July as an interfaith minister, and to get my mother-in-law down to that meeting, down to that event, we're going to fly down and probably fly back. So, but that'll be my only flight that I would have done in a couple of years, and that's kind of like how I'm looking at it.
So I think that's really admirable. And I think there's been a few people since the pandemic. It feels like since the pandemic, right? It's been one way or t'other, right? So you've either become a lot more aware of what's going on in the area of sustainability and climate change, etc., or you've gone a little bit stir crazy. So I've got a couple of friends of mine, who will name nameless, but they've been since this year, like Mexico, Puerto Rico, wherever they can go that ends in an O. It's not necessarily that they've gone, and it becomes a question of, and they're like, well, we haven't got any kids, and this is what we're doing this and we're doing that, because, well, we're financially strong enough to be able to do that. We're in the middle of our lives, and why should we have to suffer what other people shouldn't? And then conversely, there's what I've done. I haven't been on holiday for like 4 years, and this year my summer holiday next week. So excited! I'm going to a caravan down in Devon. I'm not going to tell you exactly where it is in case some of our podcast fans decide to follow me. No, but it just and I've done that deliberately because I feel that that there have been times where I've been less than thoughtful about what's going on with the planet, and actually, there's quite a lot to be said about the deliberate thinking about having a holiday within the UK, right, and travel in the UK. I know that flight prices have skyrocketed, and they're going to carry on. And finding things to do in your home country is actually part of the appeal of going on holiday, because when you go away on holiday, you're about, it's generally a package holiday where something is planned to do some activities which keep you entertained, that's not work, right? Finding those things to keep you amused and make you reinvigorated. And I think a lot of the time we've forgotten the purpose of a holiday and what it's actually designed to do. Because how many people do you know? And I don't have a number for this, and I'm not sure it's a fact check that you can make, Paul. But people go away on their package holiday. They sit by a pool. They eat food in the hotel, prepared by the chef from the hotel. Stay in the same place. Maybe occasionally go wander down to the beach, and then basically everything else is in that hotel. They don't really. They could go anywhere, right? You could literally go to wherever. It doesn't have to be on a foreign holiday, but there's a bragging right about saying, I've been to, the Amalfi Coast, stayed at this hotel. You didn't really veer too far away from the hotel, but you've been to the Amalfi Coast.
Food would be interesting, wouldn't it? It'd be different food, and there's also to say that there's also a massive price differential, because if you go abroad on a package tour,
Is there really?
Well, I don't know. I've not done it for years.
Okay. Here's my question for you, Paul. When you take out the cost of the flight and the hotel, and then you go to a nice restaurant, so the price of the meal is, say, €30, okay? But when you add on the division of the average price of the hotel, the insurance, the flights, is it actually cheaper than finding a decent restaurant in and around your locale? I would argue not.
Probably not, but people don't think about it in that context. They think about it.
Oh, but that's why we're having this
The
conversation, right?
flight is the traded price, isn't it? The flight and the.
Is that not the reason why we're having this
Well,
conversation?
yes, it probably is. You're very quiet, Gavin. Have you got any views on
No, no,
holidays?
I was waiting. I was
He's
waiting for
thinking, I've
Howard
got to
to
cancel my holiday to New Zealand immediately.
no. I was waiting for Howard to divulge the location in Devon. I had my pen and paper ready.
Actually,
It's not going to happen.
What we haven't said really is why is this a problem? Okay, so let's give you some facts here. Aviation in the UK is 8% of our carbon emission.
Wow.
It's huge. It's a huge thing in the UK. And we've got, and no one really wants to talk about it because it's certainly governments don't want to talk about it. They want to ignore it. And it's interesting.
Why do the government want to ignore it?
I don't know why. I don't get my.
I think the reason why is because so much of what's left of the UK government's industry, that's physical industry, is from aviation, and so much tax comes from aviation.
Probably
comes from fuel, comes from taxation of the profits from the aviation companies, and comes from the fact that there's so many companies in the aviation that have their hub in the UK.
Okay.
I don't think that's wrong. A couple of things. The level of emissions is incredibly high. I think that's generally accepted. But again, we come back to the distribution of flights between people. And I think, I can't remember the actual stat, and again, this is a fact-checking question for you, Paul. I think it's 40% of the population use 70% of the flights. It is that disproportionate. It's possibly even worse. So when we talk about it's 8% of our emissions, that's not across the population as a whole, because a lot of the population, like the three of us on this call, don't fly very often.
I have a lot of friends that do fly a lot. I mean,
yes,
I know someone who lives in New York and is actually working in the UK and flying backwards and forwards several times a month.
Yeah, and Howard's already just mentioned some friends that are basically flying everywhere. I've got friends that fly a lot, and on as we mentioned in the pilot episode, there's the people versus climate change. One of the topics that came up was aviation, and there was a young lady on there, and I remember her vividly when she was told that one of the options would be to limit the number of flights people could have per year. She was up in arms, because it comes down to, as Howard says, it's choice. If you restrict someone's choice, it becomes a tangible measure. So
do you think do you think they think their civil liberties are affected?
It's a good question. I think if we can't go down that route, can we make aviation more sustainable as a whole? If you listen to the industry, they're talking about sustainable aviation fuel. Some American flights have been using biodiesel and other bio-type fuels, which are miles better than the hydrocarbons. So there's potential. However,
so I was delivering some training yesterday up in London, and actually my very good friend Gary Alden, Carbon Happy World, gave me some really interesting stats that they're actually looking at hydrogen flights. The first electric flight, all electric flight, long haul flights will be happening by 2050. So there is some hope in that sense, right? There is definitely some hope.
There's a company I will put in the show notes in this country, and they are based at Oxford University, and they're the same. They've got the same name of is it Whittle, the guy that invented the jet engine?
Whittle,
Whittle, wasn't it? Whittle. So they're the Whittle Group or something. That's how they name themselves, and they are doing a lot of work, extensive work in this area of making aviation sustainable. Yeah. But just to give some people some ideas why this is an issue. Okay, so a jet engine, a 747, I think this was, uses 1 gallon per second of fuel. And
What
one
does that mean in
gallon,
real terms? What
that's
does that
what,
mean?
well, that's
What's
4.5 liters. That's 4.5
yeah?
liters of fuel per second.
Okay, and how many tons of carbon is that, or kilograms of carbon?
Well, you can do that 2.5 times, isn't it? Each liter is 2.5
So
kilos.
that's what. So 2.5 times 4.5 is. My math is awful.
10 kilos per
10,
second.
just over 10 kilos a second
Per
per
second.
second, right?
Per
So they
second.
can get pretty much the average weight of a human in about
10
5 to 8
seconds.
seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, which people think like, oh, we could use hydrogen,
Wow.
we could do this, we could do this. People don't realize. I mean, do you remember? I remember seeing, I think years ago. Do you remember Asterix the Gaul, that
Yes.
cartoon with the magic potion? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, oil is the magic potion. It really is the magic potion
Yep.
because
Yep.
it's like when you look at the amount of energy in that oil. So 1 kilo of aviation fuel is equivalent to 11 kilowatts of energy.
Wow.
So that plane is using. And now, if
One
we
second,
don't,
just for our listeners, 11 kilowatts of energy. Do you know what that it would? Can someone fact check this? How many kilowatts of energy do we use to power our house in a day?
well, 10,
That'd be
10
useful.
kilowatts. My house
We
is 10
use to
kilowatts a day.
power a house in a day is
A
10
day.
kilowatts.
10 kilowatts, yeah, about that.
Wow.
That's electricity, if you count other
Yeah.
things as well. But it's
Yeah.
about 10 kilowatts a day. So that's the point. You're talking about that every second. So you talk about, right, a wind turbine. How many wind turbines is it going to take just to get the plane from here to New York? If you were making the fuel, if you were using electricity, it's just the numbers start to become astronomical. And when you consider, like, we've got something like, I think it's about 70 kilowatts or 70 gigawatts of renewable energy in this country, or capacity or something.
Mhm.
You suddenly start realizing you need all of it and more just to keep planes in the air.
But
Well,
coming back to what Howard was mentioning about electrical flights, um, the big catch is great. We can get a plane to fly from A to B and refuel with more electricity at B. Brilliant. The problem is we have a global system. So the infrastructure that's going to be required to make that plane be refueled will be developed first in the West. Africa's not going to be able to do it. It's not going to have the money. So you're going to get to a situation where
I reckon Elon will pick up on that very quickly.
yes, quite possibly. But there's going to be a disproportionate development going forward. So there'll be more sustainable solutions in the global north, as it were.
Yeah, and I've got another hand grenade to throw into this conversation, right? So I'm doing some work in one of my other day jobs when I look after Sustainable. I do some work, helping companies raise green finances, and I'm working on a project at the moment in the area of sustainable aviation. Did you know that the cost to aviation for when a plane breaks down is so much, and the price of their parts when they break down? Because if a plane breaks down, the only time it's going to break down is when it's going somewhere. So keeping that plane in the same location in its spot is a ridiculous amount of money per hour, like a ridiculous amount of money per hour. And then the consequence of that is if you can't get the part and pay a ridiculous amount of money for the part, they have to basically make that part for you, because unbelievably, parts for plane isn't like going down to Euro parts down the road. It's just
no. Each part has to be made to a certain standard, and it has to have a registration to it.
Yeah. I learned that the other day. It was amazing. My brain was like, that's an additional cost.
There was a nut and bolt company that I knew in Barnet when I used to live in that area, and they literally sold nuts and bolts. You could walk in the door and you could buy, a few bolts, and they were going broke basically because they were just, an old company making bolts. And some guy turned up to them and said, "I've got an idea. I'd like to put numbers on your bolts. Would you, could we do this?" So, because I've got an idea where we could do this. So they created a whole range of stuff where they had these specialist bolts. They were kind of made to a certain tolerance.
Were they bolt-ons?
And numbered, not quite. But the beauty of it is these bolts were costing them like 2p each, and they were selling them to the airline for £1 each.
Wow.
Because the airline needed a bolt that they could trace a traceability on the part.
Traceability, yeah.
And he had this ability to put a code on every single part. Turn the company around.
Yeah.
Well, it would, from a penny to £1.
Well, that's the whole thing. That's the alchemy. That's the entrepreneurial spirit. And these are the sorts of ideas that that can change our listeners' mindsets to being more sustainable. If it's a sustainable practice that makes you think about doing something slightly more diligently and being slightly more diligent about your choice, or if it gives you an idea to start a business that will eventually do something to slow down climate change, surely that's our purpose.
What about the argument I hear from a lot of people? I'm in the running community. Runners go all over the world to run in particular races, and they have nothing of getting on a plane to go and run somewhere.
Oh,
that's the way it is, and the same with all sport. We could have that we will have that conversation.
Oh, we will have that conversation.
That applies to football and a few other ones. So we'll have that conversation another time. But the point of it is, the conversation I get back to people when I say, "Do you really need to get on a plane?" and go, "Well, the plane's going without me anyway, so I might as well be on it."
The plane's going without you, but your weight and your luggage wouldn't have been going on that plane if you were designed to go. So that's an extra cost of emissions into that flight. So that's a moot point, I believe.
I don't know. The plane still has to fly. So then, whether something.
Yeah, but during the
pandemic, these planes were moving around the country empty during the pandemic because they had to.
They were.
Yes. Well, that's just because idiots run the system. Right, can that be the trailer reel, please? That's the trailer reel right there.
The reason
idiots ran the system.
No, the reason that was there is because when a plane has a landing slot,
that's the flight standard slot. Yeah,
it has to keep it, and if it doesn't use the landing slot, someone can actually take it.
Yeah, but if they're all suffering from the same ailment, then surely it's just a money making scheme. No one was able to fly, so they should all just as you were. I'm just going to halt that. That's logic. That's logic. That's not where ego is the enemy. That's like, oh, hang on a minute, you're not moving and no one's moving. So why don't we just hold it for a month?
Sadly, there are lots of decisions that are made that have nothing to do with facts or reality.
Paul, I'm gonna throw in something about aviation and sport, which you just touched on. I appreciate we're touching sport in the future, but Formula One incurs 256,000 tons of CO2 every year. Happy with that fact? 73% of that is moving the cars from one Grand Prix to the next one. It
doesn't cover it doesn't cover the footprint of the fans that travel all the way around the world.
Yeah, so that's
just
the
scope, cars.
That's the scope through which they kind of ignore all the time. I went to college with a guy who worked with a company that handled the transport of all the Formula One cars. It's a very, very complex kind of area, but I appreciate the fact that it's a sport. They want to see it. They want to see the visuals. But I'm going to get shot down in flames. Is it necessary to go to 36 or 20 different venues throughout the year? Can you not just say we're going to do 5 and run 4 Grand Prix at each one? I don't know.
Because each country makes money out of the Grand Prix, so that's why they don't want to do that. So there's the issues with it. I mean, what we're touching into.
There's esports. There's the Formula E as well.
There is, but what we're bumping into here, guys, though, is this: it's about the system. It's not just the holidays, is it? It's about our financial system. It's about capitalism. It's about how we run things.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, we need to have a
But if
conversation about degrowth at some stage, and I think that one might be an interesting conversation because there's a lot to be had about that. But
Mm.
and I think some of our audience may not even understand what degrowth means, so that would be a nice conversation to have. But
But if without touching on aviation specifically, but touching on cruise liners, you had at
Oh,
one of the more recent COPs, I think it was the governor of St. Lucia, saying that we need to do something about climate change. We need to do something about climate change. And it was an American. She was being interviewed by an American TV channel, who basically just turned around to her and said to her, "You can't say that when your complete tourism industry is based on huge cruise liners coming into your harbour. Sustainability comes with costs for people,
it does.
but again, it's are these costs avoidable in the first place? That's a separate discussion.
and they're driven by greed. They're driven by individual greed and desire. So
Not sure I fully agree with that.
okay, so you need to you want to go on holiday. You want to go on holiday. You could either fly there or you can cruise there, right? And you can cruise there on the different deck, but you're going to pay more money to be on a higher deck, so your view of the sea is more, right? And you can do that. So when you're on the ship, when someone asks you, oh, well, oh, I've got this fantastic. Do you want to come up and have a look? So I'm
Yes.
sorry, I really do think it is. I really do think it is. And you can chart it all the way back to when we were all kids, and the first person in the street to get a porch. How quickly did everyone get a porch like afterwards? You know, that Jones theory type mentality of keeping up with the Joneses. I want to copy
Is
behavior.
I'm not sure. All right,
Endemic of capitalism.
maybe, yeah, I agree. But also, I think Howard's just no. Gavin touched on this thing about St. Lucia.
Keeps doing that. We still
I
so
know I
much
do. I
alike.
know I'm just is old. I'm old. I'm old, guys. I'm old, and my brain's a bit fuddy from time to times.
No, we
Um,
do look alike. We're practically twins.
you are, yeah. This thing about St. Lucia, their economy, their putting bread on the table for their people relies on the fact that they get tourism, they get people coming in
Yeah.
the door. I have it, I live in the north of Scotland. There is Invergordon, which is the largest seaport, or natural port up in here. They rely on the fact that cruise ships come into that tiny little town and bring money. That's
Yeah.
one of the most important things for Invergordon, apart from oil.
Okay, so that's really interesting that you talk about that because I'm down in Poole in Dorset, and that's one of the largest natural harbours in the world, right? And the issue then comes back to a conversation I think we had in the previous episode about we're lazy as a species. Just because that's where we've always got the food to come onto our table from doesn't means that we haven't had to be inventive with our resources that are around there. And I'm not saying for any second we should stop, the ports from being ports, etc., because there's a supply chain of food and all that sort of stuff that really matters. But we haven't had to do much thinking to carry on doing that activity. These are behaviors that are ingrained, passed down from generation to generation, that haven't required a change of habit from medieval times, where if you're a smith, you're either a shoesmith, an ironsmith, a blacksmith, whatever. I think some of those, you did what you thought. And when you decide to go do something different, it was frowned upon.
I guess
These are,
we've got to make the choice, haven't we? That's the point we were saying.
Now,
yes,
interesting enough, we're talking about aviation and travel. Um,
yes,
there's been some surveys by ebookers. Sorry, not ebookers, booking.com.
okay,
And sustainable travel is growing in terms of the number of people who want to travel sustainably. Now, I need to go and check some facts, which I'll do for the next episode, about what does that actually mean. Does it mean that they're going to stay in more sustainable venues? Are they traveling more sustainably to get to the venues? What does it mean? It does however, indicate that people at the point of booking, and I stress that at the point of booking, are considering sustainability. Once they arrive in resort, they don't care.
Can I pick you up? Can I pick something up on this and build and take a little build on that? Right. So
Yes.
travel used to be, and traveling used to be, exclusively for the very, very rich. So I'm not very rich, but I remember traveling when I was a bit younger, and quite a lot of the time, the best parts of my travel stories was the journey, not necessarily the destination. And in this whole cycle of convenience and delivery of things faster and faster and more cadence, the joy of travel has been completely removed, right? The adventure of getting on a train and or hitchhiking as I did in those days, or getting or hiring a rickety car or whatever and whatever it was, right, has been completely removed because that part of the journey seems superfluous to the end destination of sitting in X location on a beach deck chair, etc., with a towel over it, sunning myself while but actually, when I remember going back to having those conversations, having meeting these incredible people on journeys that were going off in different tangents was the best part of the travel. Meeting these really, you won't believe I met this person and they were doing this, 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 and this, and that was, and you were part of their story. Now you sit next to someone for 4 or 5 hours on a faceless flight, looking at a screen. When you land, you don't speak really to anyone, even when you go past security. These things are really important parts of interaction with other people that have been completely forgotten and lost. Right? And having that and remembering that and reimagining that and actually spending time with your fellow human is the bit that makes you feel grateful when you come back for your life, or gives you the opportunity to strive for the next thing. We've lost all that.
But
the travel industry has wiped that out from us.
Can I just check that? Because if you think about what a cruise is, and it's 7 days.
Oh no, that's different.
Ah, okay.
Because the journey is longer.
Yes.
It's not more sustainable.
The journey is the holiday.
Is the journey? Yeah.
Yes.
Right, but for the vast majority of people, again, fact check me, I don't know, right? But I would say 80%, 90% of holidays are via an aeroplane. They're not via train. They're not via. It's a much smaller percentage, is my point, right? And it becomes much more attainable for the everyday person to do that. Whereas, actually, what you really wanted to do if you went over to Bavaria, if you went to Czech Republic, or if you went to Transylvania, is go see Dracula's castle. Now, it would be great if you could travel via train, etc., to do that, but no, you'll go from Basingstoke to Luton, catch a plane from Luton to work to take you 4 hours, get out, sit around, do very little, etc., try some bits and pieces of food, visit Dracula's castle for 3 or 4 hours, go back to your hotel, spend 4 days not speaking to very many people for another flight on the way back.
It's not that whole thing. I always remember talking to people when I was on holiday, but I guess, where's that going, Howard? Do you think that people shouldn't be having holidays because of that? And what's
No, I'm thinking about the intention.
Okay.
The intention of traveling is to have a journey.
Yes.
Not to have a flight.
Yes. Right? Yes. Okay.
That's the intention of travel, right? Because we're trying to package, right, the most amount of distance in the shortest amount of time. And actually, the whole point of a holiday, in the sense of traveling, is to be able to do something that's different. And for the vast majority of people, it's exactly the same thing, going to a box to sit in a flying metal can for a period of time, served food very quickly, sitting very uncomfortably before getting it. It's gone, right? It's it's craziness. That disconnect has happened.
So are you saying that's more of a problem than the sustainable elements of travel?
No, I'm saying that the Venn diagram of convenience, travel, and airlines cross over to the thing that sits in the middle is time.
The people I know who they love the journey. They love the flying. They love, holidays.
There are people I know used to love cigarettes.
Well, true, but it's like it starts the moment they get into the airport. They get in the airport, they have a few drinks, they have some food, they got the plane, a few more drinks. It's the whole. It's
You're
a
validating
journey.
my point.
I
You're
know.
validating my point.
I possibly am. Yeah.
There's the whole element isn't to sit in an airport and consume a few drinks.
Okay.
It would be to take a journey.
Okay. I don't want to piss people off completely here. How can we make what can we say about this? How do we get something useful out of this for people? Because the reality is flying is really destructive to the planet. And even if we do find some sustainable things, it's never going to be as much as we have. I mean,
here's what you need to do. Here's a way, right? Because clearly, right. And first off, I'd like to say to the audience, right? I'm not saying everyone stop flying. I'm just saying have intention about where you're going. Do something with what you're doing. Don't just sit by a pool. Try and explore, find the things that you wanted to do in that location. Because if it's only about, I went to this location, I know, right? I know because it's happened to me where someone said to me, I went to this amazing place in the Cotswolds. Did you? Yeah, you wouldn't believe what I found I found this maze that I went to go through where we went through and we spent a few hours going around. It was so much fun going around this, and I had envy of these things that they were doing because they planned and explored the idea around the location they were doing. And actually, in the UK, because that's probably where the vast majority of people on podcasts are going to be listening to, right? I'm sure there's going to be some stuff internationally, but I can only speak about my home country, right? In the UK, and to most people's home countries, there's going to be some really interesting stuff that you want to go do, right? You just have to go and explore an area and go do it, right? How many sites in your locale have you done? And if that means instead of taking 2 or 3 holidays per year foreign, you have 1 holiday a year in the UK. Do you know what? That reduces your footprint. That makes you a much more interesting person. That gives you something to talk about to a friend that actually changes habits and changes behaviors, but not just you and your family, but for other people as well. Because that 4-hour journey in a tin box, could it be a car? Because that would be substantially, or a train, because that would be substantially less of a footprint than a plane. Mic drop, rest case, job done.
I'm planning a holiday in October, and I'm toying the idea of using the train because I want to go to Manchester, where Michelle used to live as a child. So that's my thoughts. But the train,
I guarantee you're going to get the weather that you want.
October.
In October, Manchester in October. I guarantee it'll be rain.
Yeah.
And that unfortunately is the reason why most people will say I'm not holidaying in the UK.
Weather.
But now this is a really interesting point, right? So the reason why you want to holiday in another country is because of the weather, but climate change is destroying the weather patterns and the systems, right? And we're getting warmer in the UK, and those countries are getting cooler. And actually, they're having more in the larger land masses. They're having more extreme weather. Where Spain last month had 50-degree heat in April.
Yeah,
great. Let me just give you an understanding of what 50-degree heat means. If you stand out in the sun, 50-degree heat, you're going to sweat inside your own skin and bore yourself to death. Great holiday, folks.
Agreed.
That's unsustainable completely. I feel that we've talked this topic out quite a lot, really.
We've done quite well.
We have. Do you want to sum up anything, Gavin? You haven't, because Gavin has been. I'm doing it again. Howard has been very vociferous in this show.
It's that I must say it's very out of character for him to be very vociferous, as we all know. Um, in summary, I think there are some challenges with aviation in particular. There are strides, steps being made to make it more sustainable.
Yeah.
Is that enough? I would question that. Is it going to be equally distributed across the globe? No, absolutely not. Is there a need for people to travel? I know of a friend who's going to, her company's organizing a global trip to Milan. So they're flying in everyone from director level from New York, whatever, to one place in Italy. Why can't they do it over a video call? I don't know.
It's a meet and greet. It's a team building,
Yeah.
bonding. I know exactly what it is, and it's the sort of thing. It's sort of thing I would love to have gone to at some stage in my life.
Yeah. But
Yeah, I've done a
is
few
there
of
the
those,
need to do that
sadly.
anymore with technology? Is there a need? It comes back to how I ended up the last episode, which is be thoughtful, be sensible.
Mm.
I
And
think
that's in terms of, as Howard was saying, is it about the journey? Is it about destination?
Yeah.
Think.
Well, thank you guys. Another fantastic episode for me. I love the fact that we're so clear on everything, and we're so and we agree on everything. It's brilliant. I think it's fantastic. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I definitely don't agree with that carbon capture bloke, whatever his name is.
Oh, he's a crazy
Paul,
guy.
Howard,
Oh, by the way, if you
Howard,
want to buy some
Paul.
carbon capture.
If you want to buy some seaweed, check out Howard's page. Thank you all. I will see you next time, and our next conversation will be. Oh, I'm sure we'll find something exciting to talk about.